And let's look at like on social media with like the white male fragility thing and the constant attacks on white people. Is that all right?
Like, sometimes it is deserved because there are still white males that feel very entitled to not even attack people like transgender people, but just like anyone that's not white male.
Hey guys, my name is Saleem Juma with the Colored Conservatives, and today I'm a guest on...
Welcome back to Andrew Does. Remember, do what I say, not as I do. We're here with Saleem. Saleem, what are we doing here today? What are we asking?
So we're running the streets of downtown Toronto, and we're going to be talking about Canadian misgendering laws. Now, I've already run afoul of the hate speech laws here in Canada. Almost got arrested yesterday by the Toronto police, so I'm going to have to be careful. But the Jessica Yaniv situation, even though the topic has been beat to death by rebel media, still needs to be talked about, and Canadian citizens need to know that their human rights tribunals are being abused to the max by liberals.
Things are going to get turned up a notch, I feel like, with your presence here.
That's what they tell me. Don't bring an American to Canada because we f***ed up. Cheers, guys, and stay classy, Toronto, and stay classy, Seattle. All right, folks. So first off, I want to ask you guys, how do you guys identify politically?
I'm not really that educated on politics, so...
That's okay, just opinions. Kind of, where do you think you would fall?
I don't know, like liberal, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess a little like him, a little bit liberal.
Okay. Okay, great. Do you guys know about do you guys know that Canada has hate speech laws, yeah?
Yeah.
Why don't you guys stand right here?
Yeah.
You guys know that Canada has hate speech laws?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like America doesn't, right?
Yeah. So I'm actually American.
Okay.
So kind of what I'm wondering, do you guys know about the Jessica Yaniv situation?
No, I don't.
No.
Can you explain it to me?
Sure. So Jessica Yaniv is a person that says they are transgender, but basically they don't actually do very much trans stuff. They identified as a male up until very recently. They started putting on a wig and going trans. They are actually suing 16 women for not waxing his her male genitals, because he has a thingy, you know? And he is suing in the BC, British Columbia Human Rights Tribunals. He's suing them for not waxing his male genitals. And he's using the Human Rights Tribunals to do it. What do you guys think about that?
So he went to like a waxing clinic or something?
He tried.
He tried and they didn't let him?
16 of them, but he's filing suit against all of them. Doesn't that seem a bit strange?
Did all of them decline him?
Yes.
I find that quite extreme, to be honest. Like, even though he's not even trying to play the role from like what you've explained, right? He's not like trying to look trans or even like be trans. He's just kind of saying it.
And don't women have the right to refuse to touch penises if they don't want to? I mean, that's consent law, right?
Yeah, every business has the right to like refuse service.
And something I want to tell you guys is very specifically Mrs. Yaniv has a very strong prejudice against both Asian immigrants and East Indian immigrants. This person has actually spoken out and said they are all racist and homophobic, and has very negative opinions about East Indian and Asian women in general, and has actually posted these numerous times. What do you guys think about like the LGBT community still defending this person, especially the NDP? So the national, what's NDP stand for again?
Democratic Party.
New Democratic Party. What do you think about the LGBT community kind of defending them?
They shouldn't defend him for that. No.
I don't think that's right. Yeah, they shouldn't be supporting somebody who's like racist. And
some more backstory. This person actually wanted to start a topless swimming party for 12 to 15-year-old children, LGBT children, and very specifically in the flyer it says, no parents are welcome. What do you guys think about that?
That just sounds weird.
That sounds very pedophilic.
What's your opinion on Canada's current hate speech laws?
Hate speech laws. I don't look up hate speech laws.
Well, there's certain things you can and can't say, and if you say certain things, you will be arrested.
I live my life, man, and if they want to make a judgment on that, it's not their call, because we're all human.
Yeah.
So if everybody has an opinion, and if you can't voice that opinion, then it doesn't even make sense to have open speech.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with that?
Exactly. Yeah. And doesn't matter. It's like if you had something against me, voice it.
Yeah.
But if you're not causing me any shit,
Yeah.
right? So
let me ask you something. Have you heard of the Jessica Yaniv situation?
no.
Okay. So Jessica Yaniv is a transgender identifying person.
Okay.
In theory, we don't actually know how true that is. This person has basically been using the trans identity to try to shield them as a special class, and is using the BCHRT, which is the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunals, to sue 16 waxing salons for not waxing Jessica's male genitalia. So like I get what
you're talking about.
And Jessica sued 16 specific salons. Each one of them also happened to be East Indian or Asian.
Yeah.
Jessica has also spoken and posted, there's a lot of screenshots about they are all homophobic, they are this, they are stinky. There are a lot of anti-immigrant posts from Jessica. And this person is not being prosecuted under the very same hate speech laws that they claim to be so for.
Of course, right?
Right? So they're actually abusing the system. Now, I also want to give some more context because Jessica Yaniv, they wanted to have a topless pool party. And on the flyer, it says parents are not allowed. For LGBT kids, Jessica Yaniv, or however you pronounce it, has also sent hundreds of girls, young girls, usually under the age of 10, sometimes a little bit older, 12, 13, sexual messages online. They're all archived screenshots. Now, I know screenshots can be faked, but there are hundreds, as well as many younger girls that are now in their 20s coming out about Jessica having done this for a decade.
Yeah.
Nobody, and then here's the thing, because you're Canadian, you guys can't have weapons, right? For the most part. Yeah. Jessica Yaniv pulled out a taser on a live stream, has pepper spray, and has talked about getting a gun. Jessica Yaniv is not in prison or in jail.
Of course not.
And nobody is doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Do you find that strange?
Oh, it's extremely strange.
Yeah.
But
do you think that there's a certain special class shield going on?
There's definitely a special class shield going on, and it's... How much do I word this?
Here's something. I actually have been following this story back since December.
Yep.
Before conservative media actually got a hold of it. I got banned on all tech platforms for talking about the story, for talking about Jessica Yaniv. Do you think that big tech platforms are more interested in protecting the trans community from misgendering than they are protecting children?
Well, see, the thing I've always kind of noticed in the last, I guess half a decade or so, is that social media as itself is kind of leaning towards the big hype or the norm, and
the left right now.
Yes, yeah. And if everybody is getting all worked up about these things, then it's like, okay, you get more people on our boat. Yeah, they're just gonna start rooting for the other team, right?
Yeah.
And start activating those shields and start banning people for free speech.
Kaylee,
Sarah.
It's a pleasure to meet you guys. So, good. So, what do you guys think about Are you guys from Canada? Okay. What do you guys think about Canada's hate speech laws?
Definitely good. A good thing, you know. Protecting minorities for sure.
Like, I agree.
What do you guys know about misgendering?
It's very prevalent in today's world.
Sure. So, how does that work? Is it like I identify as a woman, and if I tell you I identify as a woman today, you cannot call me a man, right?
I agree with that, yes.
So what about the people who only believe in like two genders? Do you think they're still entitled to freedom of speech? Do you think that they don't deserve freedom of speech? What do you guys think?
I think everyone's able to believe what they want, but some people should just know to keep to themselves or know what's appropriate to say or not. Because obviously you can't change what someone thinks about something, but you can change their you can try to change it, you know what I mean?
But isn't it kind of like a freedom of speech issue? Like, for instance, if I don't believe in the 2 million genders that there now are, right? Do you guys know that there's 2 million genders or like more? There's an infinite spectrum?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If, like, gender, right? It's how you identify yourself, right? Would you go up to her and say she's not Asian?
Actually, that's a point of contention these days. Current social justice logic, right? There's actually articles from left-wing publications that say race is a social construct, much like gender is. So I could technically identify as an African American woman. Do you see the slippery slope? That's kind of what I'm trying to convey here.
But I think the issue is that people are not trying to identify as different things to fuck with people. They just want to be.
Have you ever heard of Jessica Yaniv?
No.
Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Jessica Yaniv. This is a transgender person, right? And they are basically using the shield of transgenderism to do a lot of not so good things. They sued 16 salons, immigrant salons specifically, because they wanted gender-affirming care. They wanted the women to wax their male genitalia. And when the women refused, they took them to the BC Human Rights Tribunals and sued 16 of them, very specifically immigrant women, East Indian women, and East Asian women. Jessica Yaniv, has actually posted numerous times about how this person does not like immigrants, especially those from Asia and India, and is very specifically using the human rights tribunals to screw with people, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Jessica Yaniv has also is also throwing an event, a pool party for teenage and underage people, where they should be topless and parents are not allowed to come. Jessica Yaniv also has hundreds of screenshots and accounts from young girls as young as 10 that he was hitting on Facebook, and there's screenshots all over the place, and nobody can do anything about it because this person is using the shield of transgenderism, and nobody can say anything because if you speak out about that, you are committing a hate crime in Canada.
That's a very extreme example.
Also,
sure, but it did happen.
But back then, people could use the umbrella and protection of white privilege to treat black people wrong. Was that okay?
Well, what do you mean when you say white privilege? You mean like Jim Crow laws? You mean slavery? What are we talking about here?
Just treating in general. Yeah. Because that was a social construct that people observed, that white privilege was white privilege. Right. You can do whatever you want because you're white. Straight people who identify as man or woman and basically by the book people, can they really judge what's going on? Because maybe 20 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, that was really fucking dumb that we were like...
Okay, so let me change kind of the spectrum then. If we're going to say that we're equal under the law and nobody should be disparaging anyone else, then why are we consistently on social media talking about white male fragility, for instance, or straight people fragility? There was actually a straight pride parade in Boston this weekend, and the local Antifa chapter showed up and started beating people up, as usual. Do you think that's okay?
No,
I mean, should
no
we
one
be...
should be beating anyone up?
Well, okay, but then let's look at like on social media with like the white male fragility thing and the constant attacks on white people. Is that all right?
Like...
Sometimes
yeah,
it is
sometimes
deserved
it is.
because there are still white males that feel very entitled to not even attack people like transgender people, but just like anyone that's not white male. Mm-hmm. So, like,
I think at the end
why
of
are
the
they
day,
stuck in such?
But if we're all equal, right? Why are we swinging the pendulum back the other way and attacking white men?
No, it's not that at all.
Because they're not treating everyone else as equal.
You have to look at it not as equality, as what's equitable. Who needs help to be brought up into a level playing field? Do you understand?
Do you mean equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity?
I just mean like
in general.
But we all have the same rights and opportunities under the law. I mean, what do you mean? Do you mean like class issues or?
No, but we do on paper have the same rights, but do people recognize that? Do people in positions of power like exercise that? No.
I mean, they do. If you actually are caught discriminating against people, you will either be sued in civil court or you would be dealt with, especially in Canada.
No, but look at like Brock Turner, for example, white male raped, 3 months in prison? Meanwhile, there's African Americans in prison 15 years for like cannabis issues. Like, how is that fair? And that's a product of society where
there are people
white
who
men
are not
can
caught
get
up
away
yet.
with more
Do you guys think we live under a rape culture?
In some ways, in some circumstances.
Because the statistics, we actually prosecute rapists as much as we prosecute armed robbers. Would you guys say we lived under an armed robbery culture, for instance?
Say that again?
So the statistics, if we actually prosecute rapists at the same level as armed robbers. Do you think that we live under like an armed robbery culture?
But it's not like the same.
It's still a crime, though.
Will a bank have emotional trauma if it's robbed?
If I get mugged and somebody shoves a gun in my face, yeah, I think I'm going to have emotional trauma.
But then people are getting prosecuted, right? It's being dealt with, right?
Rapists are also being prosecuted, though.
Yeah, but I think the part of rape that is so prevalent and why people are so concerned of it in today's culture.
It's a disgusting crime.
It's a disgusting crime, but also, especially in recent years, women have started to really speak out.
The Me Too movement.
Of course. Yeah. And this is a big issue that women are now finally starting to become okay with talking about.
So can we delve into the Me Too movement for a second? So have you noticed that many of the accusations don't actually have any proof attached to them? Many times it's actually done on social media. It's a court of social media, of the public, and the mob mentality of that public is to destroy someone's life without actually having any objective proof one way or the other.
I think that's the worst possible way to look at the Me Too movement.
How many?
But there's been many circumstances of that happened.
Okay, how many versus how many are real though?
I don't know. We don't actually know either way. But that's kind of the issue here. You're innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. You don't have to prove your innocence. Someone else needs to prove your guilt. The prosecution's office, and with Title IX courts in the United States, at least, and universities, that's not how it works. A preponderance of evidence says 51% guilty. They'll expel you from college. If somebody accuses you of sexual assault, for instance, you cannot cross-examine the witness, or the accuser. You cannot cross-examine them. You can't have a lawyer in the room. You can't defend yourself from an accusation.
I think that, just honestly, just based on this entire conversation so far, we need to look at it in a way, everything that's going on in society today that's progressive, like trying to move things forward, bring people out to speak, you need to look at it in a way that this is helping someone. That woman on Twitter telling her story, #MeToo, whatever, that's helping someone who's actually been raped to speak out.
Destroying someone's life if they out their person without any actual proof. That actually happened just in the last few days. A woman named Zoe Quinn, who's a video game developer, she accused a male developer, Andy, I'll have to get his last name, but he was accused. There was no objective proof whatsoever. It happened a few years ago. No objective proof. He killed himself. He now has no way to defend himself one way or the other. There's the case of Armin Premji in the States, where a girl grabbed his face in a bar, started making out with him, took him outside, was making vulgar motions behind his back, yada, 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 took him to her dorm room, took a selfie with him, all this shit, signed him into her dorm room. They went upstairs and slept together. She then accused him of rape, and, the cops showed up, arrested him. The court system actually said, verbatim, that it was the woman who was the initiator and the aggressor in this case. Armin Premji was still expelled from school. So do you see that this can actually be a slippery slope in many ways?
It can be a slippery slope, but how do you know what went on? Like, maybe she initiated it, but she's still able to say no in the end.
Sure. Consent is very important, right? And they can say no at any point, but you guys do agree that you can't say no after the act has been done, right?
I agree with that, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get some ground rules here.
Yeah.
So how do you think we can fix this then? I know this is good. This could turn into like a crazy long debate. I'm sure it could be that way. But for final thoughts, how do you think we can kind of get to a consensus? Because much of the conservative right-wing backlash and male backlash indeed, and you guys know the Me Too movement has been very harsh on women in the workplace. Men no longer want to speak. As a matter of fact, I think it was over 60% of male managers do not want to be around women, period, in the workplace. How can we fix this? How do we kind of reach across the borders and have women who are very progressive feminists come and talk to these managers who feel like they're at risk because a woman's accusation can destroy their life? How do we kind of fix things?
Just for everyone to have an open mind.
Okay.
Honestly, like, I can't say what's right or wrong. I can just say my opinion.
And that's all we're looking for.
Yeah. So just as long as you have an open mind, and as long as you're responding in a way which is respectful to the person and not trying to out them, say, actually this happened, so you're wrong, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just have an open mind and speak to someone as another person, not as like someone you're trying to get answers from.
Okay. Do you have any final thoughts?
I say for men to stop raping women in general.
Well, I think that would be wonderful if we could just tell people not to rape. That's great, but one thing I've had a big problem with like the progressive movement is it's just tell men not to rape. well, most men aren't going to rape, but a rapist is going to rape whether you tell him not to rape or not. It's the same reason. I mean, if someone's going to shoot you, he's going to shoot you regardless. It has nothing to do whether you tell him not to shoot people or not.
No, but still, we're brought up in a society where, like, I have to worry about my safety walking down the street. From even, like, becoming a teenager, there's dress codes at school. I can't show my shoulders because, God forbid, a boy sees my shoulders. It's like, am I supposed to not think that I'm in danger if I do show my shoulders? Like, you're bred to think that, to be scared, which sucks, and like it's not fair at all. So I think that there needs to be an awareness that girls and boys are the same as long as you raise them the same and raise them to be respectful and treat people as people, not as other genders, whatever.
Yeah, I think it also stems from like childhood, the way you were brought up. In a lot of cultures, like girls and guys aren't treated the same even as kids. So
In my culture, Indian culture, we're treated very differently.
yeah, so things like guys being given more freedom, girls always being told to cover up, like essentially teach boys not to rape, not girls how
To be scared of rape.
be
To be
prevented,
prepared for
how to cover up, how to
prepare for in the event of a rape.
Yeah.
You know?
This conversation, but absolutely, they need to be in place and they need to be enforced.
Do you think that
But
may infringe?
community. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So do you think that may infringe on other people's freedom of speech? Like Bill C-16, the I don't think it's actually called the misgendering law, but what it was called in the media was the misgendering law. Jordan Peterson was duking it out with a bunch of people on your guys' local TV networks and whatnot. What do you guys think? Like, do you think it infringes upon other people's free speech who only believe in, for instance, two genders? Do you think that's like infringing on their free speech? Is it infringing on the people who are being insulted and offended by the laws not being enforced?
I think that being able to be recognized as the gender that you are, irrespective of other people's opinion or their like ability to tell who you are, you have the right to tell other people, and they need to respect that.
So preferred pronouns.
Human right. Yeah.
So something like that could also be termed with like gender affirming care, for instance, right?
Yeah,
So like waxing salons, for instance, like that. Yeah. So what do you guys think about the? Do you guys mind if I ask? Are you guys in the gay community or?
I'm trans.
Okay.
We're both,
you are? Okay, great.
We're both transgender.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
I didn't
both-
want to offend anyone by
it's-
Okay.
Thank you for asking. It's appreciated.
So what do you guys think about? Do you guys know who Jessica Yaniv is?
Yes.
How do you guys feel about what's going on?
I think that individual, whether or not they're trans, I don't know them.
Yeah.
They haven't personally expressed whether way. If they ask for their pronouns to be respected, they need to be respected. The fact that they may be a bad person is separate from
It's
their
separate from the trans identity, sure.
Yeah, you can call them a bad person, call them out for the truthful things that they did, any crimes they may have committed. I'm not sure, like I don't legally know what happened, but just from what I've seen in the media and on YouTube and stuff, I'm familiar with who they are and what they're accused of. And like their pronouns need to be respected unless they publicly change their mind. But we can call them a bad person because
You can call them out on other issues that aren't trans. Yeah.
Their gender representation is irrespective of what they've done or what they may be intending to do.
So since you guys are both in the trans community, do you think that people on the conservative spectrum are kind of using that to take a pot shot at the transgender community, like the Jessica Yaniv situation? What do you guys think about like the waxing issue? Like Jessica Yaniv demanded that 16 different salons wax her current male genitals, right? What do you guys think about, like, for instance, the immigrant women that they're saying they specifically targeted? What do you guys think, like, is it a targeted thing? Because Jessica Yaniv there are screenshots that show that Jessica Yaniv has a issue with East Indian women in particular and thinks that they're all homophobic and is actually using the human rights tribunals to attack these women. So there's two questions I have. What do you think, is Jessica Yaniv using this to attack East Indian women? And then also, do you think that women have a choice on whether to offer gender affirming care as far as like waxing, right? So male genitals versus female genitals. Do you think you still have the right to choose that?
You know, like in that case, from not only from what you've said, but what I've seen of Jessica, it's also possible that they just got a bad vibe, and someone who makes you uncomfortable from a human perspective, you have the right to refuse. And honestly, there are
Laws.
well, there are care professionals
Right.
who are happy to serve the trans community.
There are plenty of people out there that will do it.
If
But
you're,
she was
but if
targeting
you're
specific
walking around,
ones.
if you're walking around looking for people who will refuse you, you will find them. Believe me, like, it happens to all of us. And it's unfortunate and it's painful if you are genuinely looking for gender affirming care in an honest manner. But it's possible this person was not doing that in an honest manner.
Sure.
Yeah.
So do you think that people still have the right to refuse that kind of thing if they don't feel comfortable with male genitalia, or for instance, if they don't feel comfortable with female genitalia, if they're a male identifying person? Do you think they have the right to refuse service?
That is a really complex question.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking it. I wasn't sure I'd actually run across two members of the transgender community, and that's why I wanted to be very specific.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know what? I'm not sure. In this particular case, it's really hard to know whether or not, like, I don't know if I would personally want to provide a service for that particular individual.
Sure.
But as a trans person myself who seeks out care in an honest and, like, open manner,
Legit manner.
I would feel very hurt if someone refused it, but I would accept that.
Specifically because you were trans. Yeah.
But I would accept it because, indeed, I would never want to force anything on anyone.
Because the question is consent.
Likewise. Yeah, exactly. It's consent.
So, and then I think my final question is, how do you guys feel about, like, the rise of, like, nationalist movements and things like that? So the election of Donald Trump, for instance, the nationalist parties here in Canada, in England, in France, do you think that they are homophobic? Because I will say this, I have actually covered the Portland protests, and I've actually met a lot of transgender people that are on the conservative side. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that's strange? For instance, I'm conservative myself, and I happen to be Muslim, so a lot of people are like, what is going on here? I'm a little confused, but when I explain why, they kind of get it. How does the transgender community, I know you can't speak for everyone, but how do you guys personally feel about transgender people and LGBT people that end up on the conservative side of the spectrum, for instance, Trump supporters in the United States?
I would find it mysterious, but I would be open to talking about it.
At least.
I would be confused, but I'd be like, all right, that's what you believe, sure. Not, I don't agree, but that you're free to believe what you believe. Just like I'm free to believe what I believe.
Do you guys think there's a way that we can kind of bridge this gap of polarization and kind of come together as a community, all of us, and not just, Canadians, but Americans, English, French, all of the... Yeah. Do you think that we have the capability to do that right now, or is it just too crazy polarized?
I mean, like, if we're talking about, like, humanity and the history of, like, the universe, that's a hard question to answer. But on an individual level, just communicating, like we're
I think,
doing now.
like right now, like we have opposing political beliefs, but we're talking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't, like, nobody has to be insulting or mean or anything like that. Yeah. We're just having a chat, and, we'll walk away. We'll have a different view of something you may have said. You may take away something we've said and be like, oh, I never thought of that.
That's the way Actually, I'm sorry, I have one last question.
Yeah, I know.
How do you guys feel about, so for instance, anti-fascist groups? So I actually covered a protest yesterday. The local Proud Boys were there, and the local Black Bloc was there, the Toronto chapter. The Black Bloc was not friendly to me. I mean, they knew I was conservative, and they were not friendly. How do you feel about, like, assaults that happen? So I know that there has been a rise in LGBT hate crimes as well. How do you guys feel about anti-fascist groups? Are they defending their community, or are they kind of not only providing a bad look to current left-wing organizations, but also attacking people that disagree with them? I mean, what's your feeling on the anti-fascist groups?
Because of the recent rise in fascist groups, I've been doing a lot of research, and just earlier you asked how I feel about the rise of like the right wing and the Trump and all these factors. And in my research, you know what, honestly, I am a little afraid. But like we are here, talking is my first step.
Right.
If
If somebody tries to hurt you, you have every right to defend yourself.
Exactly, and that's basically how I feel. If someone is actively threatening either myself or someone who is vulnerable, then defense is reasonable.
Do you think like anti-fascist groups can take it too far though? Because we have like a prank YouTube video channel. We do a lot of social experiments. So we do like free hugs from Trump supporters. I don't want this to be offensive, but we do things where we, for instance, will identify as transracial. If you can change your gender, why can't you change your race? So we do things like that, and the anti-fascist groups in Seattle have taken that so offensively that they've like doxed my parents. They've come after me in like the streets and attacked me with like not only eggs and milkshakes, mind you, but like with fists and kicks as well. We've actually been in quite a few skirmishes with local Antifa groups. Do you think like they're going too far, or are they really doing community defense?
I think that history is basically an entire series of humans of all parties taking it too far.
That is actually a very deep perspective. I can agree with that. I mean, if you look at Nazi Germany, yeah.
They took it a little too far. Just a little.
Yeah. So I definitely try to actually talk to them and when I can. But thank you guys. No, this was great.
I think definitely there's nowadays a sort of like social justice, like LGBTQ kind of like agenda being pushed in the liberal media.
Is that a little weird? Like you guys identify as pretty liberal, right? We're pretty open, but do you guys feel like it's kind of being shoved down your throat in schools and media and shit like that? Just your opinions. There's no bent here. I want to hear your guys' opinions. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can feel like that, but for the most part, it's okay. Mm-hmm. I don't think it feels like it's getting shoved down my throat, but it definitely, like, the curriculum has changed where they have to talk about that and stuff, and sometimes, like, talk a little bit too much about it, but, yeah. That's my view. What do you think?
I think from what I've, like, seen and, like, experienced, it's pretty balanced for the most part, but there were some times, like, if I disagreed with somebody about like, LGBTQ laws or whatever, then I feel like I would be, like, kind of persecuted for that.
That was actually going to be my last question. Do you guys think if you were conservative and you're kind of like were, I don't know, a little bit more religious or something and kind of felt that LGBT, there's only two genders, for instance, do you think you could actually speak about that publicly in Canada?
Honestly, I think like nowadays, like people who have those kind of views, they can get persecuted pretty easy. Like with the whole like Jordan Peterson thing, like.
And is that wrong?
Like, yeah, that's wrong. We should all have free speech regardless of what our like opinion is.
I actually saw, Church in Wellesley?
I don't.
Okay, so you're not from here?
No, I'm from Seattle.
Okay, well, that's like a LGBT community. It's like highly populated with them there, and there is
okay, so yeah, it'd be like our Capitol Hill in Seattle. You guys don't know what that is, but that's like the gay community.
Yeah. So this guy actually went and he started preaching about God there. And it was crazy.
It didn't go well.
It did not go well.
The gays kind of surround him and scream at him.
Well, a lot of people from that community surrounded him. Yeah. And I don't really know what he expected doing that, because I think that would have happened with anybody who went there, because I guess I can see how it looks like he's trying to attack them in a way. Mm-hmm. I can see that point of view, but it started getting really violent too. And
do you think that's okay? I mean, people have the right to express themselves, even if it's so-called hate speech. I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to the whole hate speech thing. There's no such thing in the States, so no matter how much the liberals want it, they're not going to get it. So,
Wrapping up another episode of Andrew Does and the Colored Conservatives with Saleem here. Tell us how you felt about it. What did you learn? Did you learn anything about Canadians today? How do you feel today went? Summaries, etc.
So I actually felt really great. I think Canadians are objectively a lot more chill than Americans. I didn't have to worry about getting punched in the face. That was nice. But there also was more of a left-wing kind of push here. It's something I've been told. Toronto is definitely more social justice-y, and it's been a long time since I've actually encountered a feminist telling me that we need to teach men not to rape, and that's the ideal of how we're going to solve this crisis, and that didn't understand my points in the slightest.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good example of how people have been fed an ideology and they really haven't considered the other side.
Yeah.
So I think it's good that we got that. We did get some people that agreed with us. We got some smart people, some intellectual answers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We found people that actually were willing to not only listen, but actually held sort of conservative ideals themselves, and were like, what the hell? You can actually go to jail for calling a woman, a biological woman, a man? Like, what is going on here? So
final thoughts on Canada?
I still love it. I mean, I still love Canada. What's your national? Oh, Canada.
Do not.